Hola. Today I'm going to talk about my path that I've taken in order to become a Gringo Spanish teacher. Here we go. Let me share a screen with you. For the past 39 years, I've been a Spanish teacher. I estimate that over the years I've taught about 6,000 students. With each new class, I go through the same pattern. Students walk in with various expectations of learning Spanish. Some are highly motivated because of personal goals. Some are there because they were assigned to be there and didn't have much of a choice. Some already speak it at home and don't start out thinking that there is much more that they can learn. What they all have in common is a surprise that there is a gringo teaching Spanish. For some students, this gringo gives them hope that they also can learn Spanish. For other students, it takes time for the gringo to prove to them that he can really speak and teach Spanish. From childhood to this moment, in my whole life, I've never been very far removed from being a gringo. Sometimes gringo can be a harsh word. For the first 20 years of my life, I grew up thinking that the definition of gringo meant friend who could only speak one language, English, but not Spanish. That certainly was how it seemed to be used in the context of my personal experiences. I was born in Tombstone, Arizona. I also had lived in Sierra Vista, Wilcox, and Benson, Arizona. All of these towns in the southeast corner of Arizona had a high concentration of the Hispanic culture. In fact, most of my friends and neighbors were Mexican. One of the first friends I can remember was Tony, my next door neighbor. His real name was Antonio. He and I played many hours together. I can remember as a 7-year-old for him scaring me to death about a strange old lady that was really a ghost and went crying through the night. His parents had told him that she was in the Benson area, and for several weeks I was on edge, afraid that she might harm me or my family. Years later, I finally figured out that he'd been telling me about La Llorona, a famous Hispanic legend. Tony could speak both English and Spanish. Every once in a while, I would try to find out a little bit more about that strange Spanish language. In my naive, being naive, I knew that the words were just different sounds. Sometimes I would play a little game and would make up random sounds and ask Tony if they were words in Spanish. He would listen patiently while I said things like macaroni odo. No, he would answer. Feather skidoo. No, gringo, how do you come up with these words? I just put weird sounds together just like you guys do when you speak Mexican. Our sounds aren't weird. Let me see. What else could I say? Oh, there you said one in Spanish. Well, what did I say? You said see. Oh, see means to look at. No, see means yes. Well, how about ukshave? No, that isn't a word. I don't know. I can't think of any more sounds. There, you said another one. What did I say? You said no. Oh, no means to have an idea in your head that is correct. No, no means no. Yes, really? No, see means yes and no means no, okay? Okay. As confusing as Spanish was to me back then, I'm sure that I enjoyed trying to figure out words that sounded strange more than he enjoyed patiently trying to teach me. Raymond was another neighbor that I played with. We usually played baseball or rode our bikes. His real name was Raimundo. Raymond had two sisters, Dora and Gloria. Their real names were Dorotea and Gloria. Sometimes those three, my two sisters and I, would play sea hunt. There were only 3 TV stations in those days that we could get reception from in Tucson. The best channel, Channel 13, had Sea Hunt, a black and white show where divers would face sharks and octopi, fight the bad guys, and save the world from takeover and destruction. Of course, I was normally Mike Nelson, the hero, and Raymond was usually the bad guy. I must have saved Dora, Gloria, and my sisters, Kathy and Connie, 1,000 times. Sometimes Raymond would say, Hey, gringo, you always get to be Mike Nelson. It's my turn. So then I would be the bad guy. I had lots of other friends at school who were Mexican. We usually played baseball or football. Then there was Rosie. Her real name was Rosario. All the second grade guys thought that she was the prettiest girl, and she knew it. That didn't matter too much to me because I was more concerned about playing football and baseball. One day, Rosie came out and interrupted our important football game. She announced that she would hold hands with the guy that won a special race. She took the entire group of boys over by the water fountain. She told us that the race course would start there, go around the tree on the other side of the playground, that we would have to come back, climb up the slide, and slide down. Once back on the ground, we'd have to race back to the water faucet. The first one back would win the prize to get to hold her hand. I wasn't that excited about holding her hand, but I sure did want to run and win the race. There were about 15 boys who lined up behind the water faucet. I realized that I could beat everyone there pretty easily except for Ben. His real name was Benjamin. We were rivals in every sport. I knew that I wanted to beat him real bad and that he would do anything to beat me. The competition would be much more important than even holding Rosie's hand. She said, "Get on your mark, get set." Ben cheated and took off early. Boy, was I mad. She yelled, "Go!" Ben already had a 3-step head start. I knew it was going to be tough to catch him. I sprinted across the playground towards the tree. He beat me to it. He was still a step ahead. I felt tired coming back towards the slide in the playground area, but I kept running as hard as I could, even though it hurt. He must have been getting tired too, because I finally caught him just as we were about to get to the slide. I think that the deciding factor was that he barely slowed down in order to start climbing up the ladder to the slide. I didn't. I hit the ladder at full speed. My right hand stung a little from the contact against the metal rail. But I was now finally in front of him. There was no way that he could pass me on the slide. I slid down as fast as I'd ever done it before and hit the ground, almost running full speed. From there, I was able to beat him easily the remaining distance to the water fountain. I had won. Rosie came over and took my right hand. I felt the pain from my bruised hand. I grabbed her other hand and then I had hold of both of her hands. I twirled her around like some sort of a dance move. Everyone probably thought that I was excitedly celebrating my victory and the opportunity to hold Rosie's hand. But I maneuvered her around so that my left hand would match up with her right hand. My left hand didn't hurt. Then she started skipping and swinging her arms, and I had to skip and swing my arm also in order to keep up with her. It was like skipping a victory lap in front of the staring girls and the jealous boys. As I skipped and swung my arm in time with hers, I remembered feeling foolish and thinking that girls were pretty weird. But I silently exulted because of the attention I was getting from my peers. It was satisfying to overhear the admiration of one of the boys talking to his friends. "Boy, that Gringo sure can run." The real girl that I liked was Amelia. Her real name was Amelia. I just kind of admired her from afar. She was in my class. I thought that she was even prettier than Rosie, a lot smarter, and a lot quieter. I never talked to her. Playing baseball or football at recess was much more important than talking with some girl, even Amelia. But when I had to do a book report, I did one on Amelia Earhart, the airplane pilot, because she had the same first name as Amelia. My dad took me to see my first high school football game. Amelia's older brother wore number 22 on the high school football team. That became my favorite number. And even a few years later, when I was in high school, 22 was the number that I chose. There was only one Mexican that I didn't like very much. That was Lorenza. It had nothing to do with the Hispanic culture, and her real name was also Lorenza. She was taller than me. She was kind of plump. She was intelligent. What I didn't like was that she had a crush on me and made no secret about it. In fact, she would chase after me almost every day during recess on the playground. If she caught me, she would hug me and sometimes even try to kiss me. She was almost as strong as me, and once captured, it took a huge effort for me to get away. Luckily, I was quite a bit faster than her, so that if I saw her coming, I could usually run away. But sometimes I would be so focused on the football or baseball game that she would sneak up from behind and grab me. Usually my friends would help me out. I would be at shortstop intently watching the batter. Suddenly I might hear Steve from center field yell, and his real name was Esteban. "Look out, Bobby! Lorenza's coming from behind you." I would glance backwards just in time to see her getting close. I would take off running. She would chase me. I would hear some of my peers yelling, "Boy, that gringo sure can run." After 3 or 4 minutes, she would get tired and stop. I would go back to the game mad because it had been interrupted. I had wasted some of my precious recess time getting away from her instead of doing the real important things like playing shortstop. In high school, Ralph, David, Al, and Ricky were all on my baseball and basketball teams. Their real names were Rafael, David, Alfonso, and Ricardo. I took 2 years of high school Spanish. Sometimes I would proudly talk to them using the words that I had learned in class. They would listen and understand me, then they would say something that I hadn't learned in class, and I wouldn't understand them. They would laugh and tell me, "You don't speak too badly for being a gringo." It was kind of interesting to me that all of my Mexican friends had two names, the ones that they were called by at home by their parents and families, and the anglicized ones that they were required to use at school. One thing that all of these friends had in common was that they sometimes called me Gringo. In my own mind, I just figured that Gringo meant friend that could only speak English but not Spanish. It wasn't until much later that I learned the dictionary definition of gringo. And the definition from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, quote, "Gringo, in Latin America, a foreigner, especially an American or an Englishman, often used contemptuously." When I was 20 years old, I went to Argentina as a missionary for my church. I finally learned the dictionary definition of gringo, foreigner, often used contemptuously. Sometimes I was called a Yankee, a Norteamericano, North American, an extranjero, a stranger or foreigner, a rubio, a blonde, or even a taro, a foreigner from Italy, not, or even gringo. If that was happened, it was done by people that I did not personally know, that had passed me on the street. The only one that treated me contemptuously on a regular basis was a particular store owner that was close to where I lived. He always would let everyone in the store go in front of me to be checked out for their groceries, even though I had been there first. He would usually put his finger on the scale when weighing the meat, so he could charge me a little more. He would give me a Band-Aid, aspirin, or a piece of candy as change instead of the coins that were owed. He several times gave me torn peso bills as change and would not take these same bills back the next time I came to his store to buy something else. But everyone else that I knew in Argentina on a personal basis treated me as a friend, an equal, and a good person. Well, then, for the past 39 years, I've been a Spanish teacher. I estimate that over the years I've taught about 6,000 high school and college students at every level of the language. For many students, this gringo gives them hope that they also can learn Spanish. They realize that their teachers started from very humble beginnings with the language, just like where they're at now. I remember sitting in the Espinosa home in Argentina, struggling to understand any of the words in the conversation that was taking place. I remember the senora speaking to their dog, laying on the floor beside me. The dog understood it, got up, and moved. It was obviously knew what she was saying. I didn't. It's pretty humbling to realize that a dog knows more Spanish than you. On the other hand, by not giving up on myself and continuing step by step, I've reached the level where I've been able to teach high school and college Spanish classes for 39 years. I teach the beginning to the advanced levels of vocabulary, grammar, and literature. So I know what it's like to struggle mightily with the language. I also know what it takes to learn the language at a high level. I have lived a life of starting at the bottom of the Spanish language and persisting at every level until I've become quite proficient. I've learned many techniques that help me and others to learn the vocabulary, grammar, and to master the language. From childhood to this moment in my whole life, I've never been very far removed from being a gringo, and those have mostly been pleasant memories. I've lived in other Spanish-speaking countries. I've learned vast amounts of culture, history, and geography of faraway Spanish-speaking people and culture. I also realize that the Spanish language, the places, the activities, the people and friends have all become part of me. I love the places I've been, the adventures that I've had, and the people that I have known. I still prefer my definition of a gringo. I want to be a friend, and now I can even speak two languages. I hope that you will allow me to share some of my experiences and those techniques with you. Well, you've been able to see my journey in my life of being a gringo and becoming a Spanish teacher for many, many years. I hope that you will give me the opportunity to teach a little bit of Spanish with you. And subscribe to my videos, please. And hopefully we'll see you later, next time. Adios.